from Quilters Hideaway. We are a quilt shop up in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, and National Log Cabin Day is coming up. So we wanted to do a quick tutorial, have some kits in the shop so you could make a fast log cabin project today or tomorrow. So behind me, I have the long and skinny version of our table runner, which is 4 log cabin blocks. If you're never sure how many log cabin blocks the project has, always count that center square. So in this case, the center square is blue. There's 4 blocks on that one. It's long and skinny. Or there's the center piece, so like a table centerpiece where you could put a vase of flowers in the middle or a fun little project or something in the middle. This one is the 4 or the square log cabin, but we're going to make them together really quick. I'm going to show you how easy a log cabin block can be and give you a few tips and tricks as well. So let's get started. First off, always, there are 1,000 different ways to make every block imaginable. Today, I'm going to show you a few of my favorite ways, but all you'll need are some 2.5-inch strips of fabric. I've got red and white, and then a 2.5-inch square, or 4 2.5-inch squares for that very middle block. Everything is done with the 2.5-inch strips, so if you've got a couple jelly rolls left over, grab those. If you don't, come on into the shop, grab yourself a kit, you'll knock it out in a day, and you'll have a fun project for 4th of July weekend, which is coming up fast. All right, here we go. I go ahead and pre-cut all of my blocks, especially if I'm just making a handful of blocks at a time. So for this project, again, I just used 4 blocks. So I went ahead and pre-cut all of my strips. And then at the end, I'll show you some tips if you're making like a huge quilt to make it go a little quicker for you. So pre-cut your strips. It's the best way to not get confused. And lay out at least 1 block. So here, we're going to lay it out together. I've got my center square, it's 2.5 inches. Next comes my white piece. And at this point, we're just laying it out together. So I've got my little white piece right here. And I'm just going to go in a circle. Next would be another white piece, another red, and another red. So it's always 2 white, 2 red. All right, here's the easy math. If you're doing it at home and you want your numbers, I'm going to share them with you today. So 2.5-inch square in the middle. My first white is a 2.5-inch square as well. Then 2 plus 2 is 4 plus my 1/2-inch seam. My next white, which was right here, that's 4.5. Next red is 4.5. Again, all of these are 2.5-inch strips, so 2.5 by 4.5. 6.5. Next I get another white piece. 2, 4, 6.5 again. And then the next piece is 8.5 inches. I just went up. So 2.5 by 8.5. And a red that's 2.5 by 8.5. All right. Then I go to one more red. Again, it's always white, white, red, red. I couldn't see the next layer. There it is. For this log cabin, I'm going to do 3 logs or 3 rotations all the way around. So I'm going to do another white. This guy goes up to 10. My next piece is 12.5, and then a red at the very tippy top right here, that's 12.5, and last but not least, it's 14.5, so my block is 14.5 inches square. There's my pieces, and I got it all laid out. Now, let's put it together. See, it's not that hard. It's not that complicated. We often like to overcomplicate this block and get nervous or worried about it. It's actually a great block for beginners, a great block to test your 1/4-inch seam. So here we go, just like earlier, we're gonna walk through this. My 2.5-inch square, I'm gonna sew that to my 2.5-inch white piece. So now I have 2 pieces together. This next seam is the most important seam that you're gonna have. You're gonna take one of your 2.5 by 4.5 white pieces, it's what comes next. If you put it on this side or this side, you're gonna change the way your log cabin goes. So whatever you do, stay consistent. Consistency is key in quilting. It's key with that 1/4-inch stitch as well. But decide what way, whether you're going to sew it on the right side or whether you're going to sew it on the left side, and always do it that way, or you're going to have blocks going one way and some blocks going the other way, and you'll have to seam rip like I had to the other day. So I just lay right sides together. I sew down one side, and I get what looks like this guy. In this log cabin, because I'm using 2.5-inch strips and I cut them on an AccuQuilt or you're using a pre-cut, I don't trim anything up. If it needs trimmed, I'll go ahead and trim it up, but I'm not using a ruler. There is a pretty cool Creative Grid log cabin ruler out there, so if your 1/4 inch isn't perfect, or if you're really precise and want a trim tool to use, check out that Creative Grid trim tool. It's pretty great. But here I am. I've got my blue, I have a white and a white, and now I'm going to come right over here with my next red piece. All right, so I'm going to put this next red piece right here. I'm going to go to the machine, sew it down, and this is what it looks like. All right, I continue to work around. So white, white, red. I need a red piece down here, and I always tap. When I lay my block down, I always tap what piece I'm working on so I know exactly what edge my next piece is supposed to go on. If I don't do that, I'm more likely to put it on the wrong spot. All right, also because I've pre-cut my strips, I'm a little luckier because I know it either goes up here or down here. And if I put it down here, then my log cabin is no longer building in that circle. And so I know it goes right up here. I'm gonna sew it down, and it's gonna look a lot like this little guy. So again, I'm gonna tap them here. White, white, red, red. I'm gonna do another white right over here. So I always do 2 of each color. So white, white, red, red, white, white, red, red, and so on. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew this guy right along that side, and I'm just working on building my next unit. Now, if we do our circle, and I always start in the middle, and then I come out here, I'm also looking at the size. So this first white is my smallest piece on my circle, or on my round. So I have white, white, red, red, white. I need another white right at this top. I grab my other white right here. I sew it along, and I move on. So now I look like this. And again, I'm gonna count. White, white, red, red, white, white. Red is up next. And I'm gonna continue to do that all the way around. When I laid out my blocks, I knew, or I could see exactly what piece goes where. Again, this log cabin for these table runner options have 3 rounds. So I'm gonna go white, white, red, red, white, white, red, red, and last but not least, white, white, red, 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 and I'm gonna be done. Now, that's the perfect way to do it if you're just making a few blocks at once. But if you're making quite a few blocks at once, I'm gonna share a couple tips and tricks really quick. The first one is I'm gonna take 1 strip of the fabric that comes right next to my center square and 1 strip of my center square. And instead of cutting those into 2.5-inch squares like I did right here, I'm gonna leave them in that 2.5-inch strip, and I'm gonna sew all the way down. Then I'm gonna go to my cutting table, and I'm gonna cut every 2.5 inches. And that basically gives me that very first step already done. Okay, so then I'm gonna have a bunch of these blocks that look like this. It's kind of working in a supply chain line or working in a chain. So I'm gonna take these blocks, and I'm gonna take 1 big strip of white, and I'm just gonna lay them on here all the way down, one after the other, and I can sew that whole seam. So it enables you to chain piece or sew them super quickly without having to cut everything precisely all at the beginning. All right. The next tip that I wanted to share has to do with finishing off your project, and it has to do with this fancy tape right here. This is painter's tape. It's just blue painter's tape from your local paint shop or hardware shop or anything like that. I love it to mark my lines when I'm quilting on my domestic machine. So if I'm not using a long arm to quilt something, I love this stuff. What I did on this quilt is all I've done is I've just sewn some straight lines straight down it fairly often, but I took this tape, and because when I make a log cabin, I have all these points all the way down it, I lined my tape up with those points, pulled it straight, slapped it on there, and then I had a straight line to follow all the way down. I didn't have to worry about drawing on my block or on my quilt with anything. All I do is I sew right along the side. I don't sew through the tape. Sewing through the tape is a no-go. So right along that side of the tape, pull it up, and you're good to go. You're set, your project is done, and you don't have to worry about cleanup or getting marks out of your quilt, which is always a huge question that we have in the shop. So straight line quilting, painter's tape is always your friend. We use it quite often. But stop in the shop, grab your log cabin kit or follow this tutorial and make your own log cabin quilt. Be sure to share it on our Facebook page or on our Instagram. We would love to see your projects finished, and happy National Log Cabin Day on June 28th. Happy quilting, guys. See you at the machine.